It's kind of the way I feel on Monday mornings when I get to work after having been gone for 48 hours. Isn't it great that after working 5 days, we get 2 days off? Most of us do, anyway. I hope that you were able to enjoy a weekend of rest and relaxation, or maybe just stuff around the house that needed doing because you can't get it done while you're doing the 9-to-5 grind Monday to Friday. Does anybody still do a 9-to-5 grind Monday to Friday? I feel as though this whole notion of 9 to 5 is an antiquated notion, just like I'm an antiquated talk show host. And by that, I mean old. I hope still at least a little bit relevant. Anyway, I feel on Mondays as though we are being reunited after our weekend away. And that is the name of the song from Peaches and Herb. Was there a better band name or duo in music history? Move over, Brooks and Dunn, Hall & Oates, Simon and Garfunkel. I've got you some Peaches and Herb. On this day in 1979, 46 years ago, Reunited began a 4-week run at number 1 on the U.S. singles charts. And that's the song we choose to start our show today. This Monday, the 5th of May, happy Cinco de Mayo to all who celebrate. Enjoy that margarita and Mexican food today, because why not? It's May the 5th. 7 minutes after 9. Thank you very much for stopping by, spending some of your time with us. I hope you did enjoy that weekend. We got busy, and as busy as we could be with our Farwell for Hire fundraising. Spent a little bit of time with the Malul-Balami Farwell for Hire mobile, prowling the streets of Waterloo yesterday, taking care of an odd job that I was hired for. So the goal this year is twofold. One is 31 jobs in 31 days. I want to make sure I'm doing at least a job every single day while I'm out and about this month. So I was hired right away on Thursday afternoon on the 1st of the month, and then I was out again yesterday. I've got another job booked tomorrow. These things tend to start a little bit more slowly, but the calendar is filling up. So if you would like to hire me, if you would like to help me reach that 31 jobs in 31 days, please do reach out. Let me know what I can do for you. Our friends at Conestoga Electric already have me booked for later this month, and a nice tidy $5,000 donation coming in from Kyle and the team. We're very grateful for that. You can be just like Conestoga Electric, or maybe you want to be like TLC Pet Food, which is putting up $2,500 as a cash early bird prize for our Farwell for Hire 50/50 draw. The jackpot sitting just under $28,000 as of this morning. That means your take-home share just under $14,000. That's not bad. That's a pretty easy way for me to fundraise too. Ticket packages start at just $10. You can get yours at cf5050.ca. It's my new favorite hobby. I just keep refreshing the cf5050.ca page all weekend long to watch that jackpot climb. Almost at $28,000 now this morning. And again, if you buy before Friday, you're eligible for that $2,500 cash early bird prize thanks to TLC Pet Food. And even if you win that $2,500 when we make the draw on Friday, that's the early bird draw, you're still eligible for that big jackpot, now at almost $28,000. Make sure you get your tickets at cf5050.ca. All right, let's get to that Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Number 1, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will, quote, always talk about Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. In an interview with Meet the Press host Kristen Welker, Trump says the topic will come up when he holds his first in-person meeting tomorrow with Prime Minister Mark Carney. Trump also claims that the U.S. subsidizes Canada to the tune of $200 billion a year. Number 2, a Canadian delegation, including veterans between the ages of 96 and 105, is in the Netherlands to mark Liberation Day. The Nazi occupation of the Netherlands ended 80 years ago today, bringing to an end the so-called Hunger Winter. An estimated 7,600 Canadians lost their lives in the effort to liberate the Western Netherlands. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the Centre in the Square posted a surplus of more than $400,000 last year on the strength of more than 110 performances, including a couple of sold-out Hindi language shows. The Centre's goal this year is to stage between 130 and 150 shows, which would mark a return to pre-pandemic levels. Number 4, a fundraising campaign for a better tent city exceeded its $200,000 goal. The campaign, which wrapped up on April the 30th, managed to raise more than $204,000 to support the community of tiny cabins on Ardelt Avenue in Kitchener. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, it looks like Tim Hortons is baking some star power into its breakfast menu, the cafe chain, launching 2 scrambled egg boxes with Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds. The boxes, developed by the Vancouver-born star, come in bacon or sausage varieties, filled with 2 scrambled eggs, hash browns, and chipotle sauce. Tim's says Reynolds chose the items because they resemble the bacon and egg breakfasts that he and his family eat at home. Sure you do, Ryan Reynolds. Sure you do. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. A quick break. When we come back, am I the only one? Okay, I'm kind of hopeful of 2 things right now. 1, the weather gets a little warmer. And 2, Donald Trump just stops making so much news. I don't know if it's a chicken and an egg thing, right? He makes the news because we give him the airtime, or when we give him the airtime, he makes the news. But I'm growing a little weary of the Donald Trump influence. And so, too, are right-of-center leaders around the world. We'll talk about it coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Believe you me, I have heard it many times before. We all suffer. We collectively suffer from TDS, right? Trump derangement syndrome. Look, I'm as tired as the next person of hearing Donald Trump's name, particularly in a negative way. He keeps making all of these outrageous statements, including in the conversation with Meet the Press, where at least he conceded that there would be no real attempt to militarily invade Canada. But he continues to harp on this idea of some arbitrarily drawn line between Canada and the United States. And since he's a real estate guy at heart, it only makes sense, of course, that Canada become a 51st state, part of the United States. We know that's not going to happen, certainly not something we wish to happen. And it kind of casts a shadow over the first meeting tomorrow in person between Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump. We'll see how that all plays out. But this whole idea of Trump derangement syndrome and people being so concerned about Donald Trump. Again, I wish we could go a day or more without having to hear his name or hear another outrageous statement that he has made. But I'm starting to wonder if conservatives themselves, those who lean to the right side of the political spectrum, are a little bit tired of Donald Trump. Because after Donald Trump's success in the United States and throughout that election campaign in the States, there was a great deal of conversation around right-leaning leaders, perhaps even further to the right, not just right of center, but right of center, if you will, and how they were gaining traction the world round. But it strikes me lately that the election of Donald Trump may be a bad thing for the conservative movement in general. I will point to you, of course, to what just happened in Canada when Pierre Poilievre had a 20-plus point lead at the beginning of this year and ended up on the outside looking in, literally, after the federal election in Canada. That entire lead evaporated, and the Liberals under Mark Carney form government here in Canada, albeit a minority parliament, but still the Liberals win, and Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, despite making gains in terms of the popular vote and the number of seats, do not form government. And Pierre Poilievre himself not even winning his own riding. Some people said along the way, they made the comparisons between Pierre Poilievre's style and Donald Trump's style. I never put a ton of stock in that, but the results seem to suggest the Donald Trump factor and the comparisons to him impacted the Conservative outcome in our federal election. And then consider Australia, where it seemed almost certain that the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative wing in Australia, was headed towards sure victory. And then, upon losing this weekend, blames, quote, the Donald Trump factor. It was devastating in Canada for the Conservatives, says the quote, where the Canadian Conservative leader lost 20 points over the course of a few months. I think that has been a factor here, as in Australia. A little later on, the leader of the Liberal Party, who could not shrug off the comparisons with even a focus group of his own supporters describing him as, quote, too Trumpy. So maybe, just maybe, Donald Trump becomes someone in the conservative movement that is actually holding back the conservative movement globally because he is seen as a little bit too reckless, a little bit perhaps too right of center. And at least in North America or on this side of the world, we are less inclined to move in that direction. We certainly were less inclined here in Canada. It appears we were less inclined in Australia as well. And I just can't help but wonder if the Donald Trump factor is having an impact, and a negative one at that, on conservative politics around the world. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We're about 4 minutes away from your update in the 570 News Center, which leaves time to talk to you. Our phone lines open the minute we begin the show every day. Let's go to them now. Ibrahim, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, definitely we are obsessed with Trumpism, all the time talking about. Even the journalists, the question all the time, they ask them the question about Trump, about Canada. I don't know. They know. So
I think they're just waiting for a more outrageous answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they want. They want him, to embarrass or slip his tongue. But he's not even. He said, "I wish Canada to become part of United States." Even from the beginning, we are absolutely overreacted. Our politicians, when they say, "Oh, never," we shouldn't say never. I think if we said from the beginning, our politician acting like, "Okay, thank you, Mr. President." Inviting to American family, but we stay more than 160 years like this, so we want to stay the same way. Thank you very much, and we appreciate you to respecting our wishes. That's what we should say, not all the time. So if anything coming up tomorrow, the same like they did in White House to the Ukrainian president, I think this Prime Minister, he shouldn't act angrily. He should say, "Oh, thank you, Mr. President, but we are sovereign country more than 60 years. So thank you very much. This we have to discuss what is our mutual interest between two countries." That's what he has to say. All
right, Ibrahim. It's interesting advice for Prime Minister Carney heading into that meeting tomorrow. Who was it? Was it Roosevelt? Forgive me, I get it all mixed up. But walk softly, carry a big stick. So Ibrahim says maybe walk softly into that meeting tomorrow. Mary, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Good Monday morning.
Good Monday morning.
Dull and rainy will be. Anyway, I wish you all the success in your Farwell for Hire.
Thank you.
Even more money than last year.
Mary, we got to get about 20,000 more this year, okay? We need $150,000 so we can reach 1.5 million for the total campaign. Okay?
Okay.
The drive for 1.5.
Okay, I've got another comment.
Yes.
And it kind of rankles me, and it may show my colors. Everyone says, and Pierre Poilievre lost his own riding.
He did.
But no one tells the truth that there were 91 people.
That doesn't matter, Mary.
It certainly does.
Nah, come on, Mary.
Come on. Look at...
Come on with your coming on.
No, but that's splitting the vote all kinds of ways.
Do you really think people voted for any one of those people? They knew Pierre Poilievre was the guy. How come that didn't hurt Bruce Fanjoy, the man who won?
What? There were? Oh, you mean the 91 votes?
Yeah, the 91 names. How come it didn't hurt him?
Bah humbug.
Okay, listen. I think that the voters in the Ottawa area, in Carleton, where Poilievre was running, just had their say. And don't forget this, okay? The guy who basically campaigned on axing taxes and saving money has now ended up, it's costing us the cost of a by-election so that he can win a safe seat and remain in the residence of the official opposition that we as taxpayers fund for him. Not saving us a whole lot of money. Somebody would be living there anyway once they elect a new Conservative leader, but it's not exactly fiscally prudent. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, Ontario Premier Doug Ford didn't just sound off on judges in this province last week. There are also reports that new legislation coming to the province in the months ahead will include mandatory drug treatment for those who have been involved in our criminal court system. So not necessarily the kind of thing that we've talked about in neighborhoods where you see somebody in the throes of addiction on your street corner, for example, and moving them through into mandatory treatment. But if they are already involved and present in the criminal court system with an addiction, moving them through that system then into mandatory treatment. Anita Sigeti is a leading mental health law expert in Canada and joins us this morning to talk about it. Anita, thank you very much for your time. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
What do you make of the reports that new omnibus legislation in Ontario might include this provision for mandatory treatment?
Well, I wish I could say that we're surprised to hear. We're not surprised. I think all advocates involved with people who use drugs and people with serious mental health issues were anticipating that something would come up in this nature. As you know, in BC and now in Alberta, and I think perhaps in Nova Scotia as well, there are recent efforts to begin all kinds of coercive, mandatory, involuntary treatment for people who use drugs and to detain them. Now, this is a sort of, as you say, slightly different approach, focusing on those already criminal justice involved or charged. And to Ontario's credit, at the minute, it's just calling for consultation. So it is, Premier Ford and Ontario are proposing to consult with stakeholders, including those with lived experience. But overall, this is a wrong-headed approach. It's short-sighted. It's misguided. All coercive measures to compel people into some kind of treatment toward abstinence from drug use has been shown to be worse than useless. So it's not really just value neutral, but it's actually harmful in the long run unless people want that kind of intervention. And I guess the biggest concern is there are not voluntary services available for people. So I think where we'll start with the advocacy is to encourage Ontario first to make treatment available on a voluntary basis and to ensure that people who want to get help can get that help. Because right now, whether within our correctional system or without, there simply are not services available to people who want them. So this idea of forcing people who don't want them and everybody into mandatory treatment is a very strange place to begin when it's clear that those who do want it can't get it. So we're going to force it on people who don't want it, who will be harmed by it in the end and not helped by it, while we do not offer or make available any kind of help or supports to those who are desperately seeking it inside and outside our correctional system. So it is pretty wrong-headed to start here.
How do we balance then the needs of communities in this province and really, as I'm sure you know, Anita, across the country today? Right here in our community, we had a CTS site that was closed down. In fairness, it presented no major incidents in the entire time that it was open, about 5 years. But some neighbors were concerned about the behaviors they saw in and around the CTS site. When you have neighborhoods concerned about those behaviors, and yet these facilities available to folks that don't seem to be putting a dent in the problem, where do we go?
Well, I guess I suppose it depends on what problem you're targeting. So if we're talking about safe consumption sites, for example, which is, I think, perhaps what you're talking about.
Yes.
So people are dying. So huge numbers of people are dying. Young people who use drugs, who are not necessarily dependent or addicted to substances, but recreational drug users, first-time drug users, people who use drugs in order to maintain their ordinary sort of living and working conditions, because that's what they need. Those people are dying. Not because of addictions underlying that problem, but because of, as we all know, the toxic drug supply. So their drugs are poisoned. They're toxic by fentanyl or other things that are poisoned. So if that's what we're targeting, then we know that safe consumption sites address that problem, where people's overdoses are reversed by trained professionals and supports are offered. And treatment options are also offered. So for those seeking help, support, and treatment, they can get that there too. But the other thing that they'll get there is they're going to be saved. They're not going to die. So safe consumption sites have a zero death rate. They've saved these lives. No one has died. When you defund and eliminate and remove them, you're causing people to die. So defunding those kinds of supports and services is lethal, and it's not going to be remedied by enforced addiction. So you can't substitute one for the other. Enforced mandatory addictions treatment is not going to save the lives of the people that the safe consumption sites have helped. So harm reduction approaches, safe consumption sites have been proven to save lives. Meanwhile, coerced treatment, mandatory treatment, abstinence-based programming that people are not seeking or signing on to voluntarily, there is no data to show that overall they improve outcomes or they save lives, but there is data to show that after a period of enforced abstinence, when people inevitably return to using drugs, they then die by overdosing. They go back to their regular dose that they would have taken before a period of enforced abstinence, and they die. So there's a lot of harm involved with coercive approaches. And any kind of coercive forced detention where you lock people up, for a period of time and force them to engage in things against their will is traumatic and harmful. So what you're doing is you're re-traumatizing people who are often using drugs because of underlying trauma. So there is underlying trauma. These are survivors of trauma who are using drugs. And rather than offering treatment, support, counseling to address the underlying trauma that may be, intertwined with their drug use, to those who want to, work on those underlying issues, their historical trauma and so on, no counseling or services are available to the people who want them. Rather than doing that, we're going to traumatize and re-traumatize them by involuntary, psychiatric detention, or all of us on involuntary drug user detention, maybe physical restraints in the detox process, maybe chemical restraints, all of which is violent and abusive and traumatic. So we're going to add this other layer of trauma on top of everything else. and then drives people away from ever voluntarily coming forward as drug users seeking help because of this terrible experience that we're about to enforce upon them by law. So the long-term harm in something like this is really, really high. And I think that if Ontario starts to speak with known advocates for the drug user community, people involved in the harm reduction movement, people who've been working with safe consumption sites like Zoe Dodd and the Empowerment Council and Jennifer Chambers and Moms Stop the Harm, the moms and family members of those who have died in this opioid toxic, time and throughout these deaths, I think they will hear that what they're proposing is not a solution to anything. If anything, it's going to make everything so much worse. They're just going to exacerbate the harm. So this is not the solution.
Anita, I really appreciate your time on our show today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Anita Sigeti is a leading mental health law expert in Canada, makes it pretty clear. This is not the solution. The slight difference to what's being proposed in this legislation, which will begin with a consultation, is that the treatment will only be imposed upon people who have already entered our criminal justice system. I bristle a little bit at using the word justice. You know how I feel about that. It's a court system. But nonetheless, if you are already finding yourself in our system charged with some offense, then you could be directed to mandatory care for your addiction, mandatory treatment for your addiction. Again, Anita makes it clear that she does not believe this will work. It's a consultation at this point only. As always, the devil will be in the details. With whom is the province consulting? What form does that consultation take in terms of the questions asked, etc.? But what do you think of what the province is proposing? If you're already engaged in the system through a charge or some other means that brings you into our courts, can we then move you into a mandatory treatment program for addiction, as opposed to just seeing you on the streets in the throes of addiction and moving you into a community-based program of some kind? In this case, what the province is proposing is you're in the system now. We're going to direct you from this part of the system on the criminal side into the treatment side. Your thoughts always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
This idea of forcing people who don't want them into mandatory treatment is a very strange place to begin when it's clear that those who do want it can't get it. So we're going to force it on people who don't want it, who will be harmed by it in the end and not helped by it, while we do not offer or make available any kind of help or supports to those who are desperately seeking it inside and outside our correctional system. So it is pretty wrong-headed to start here.
Anita Sigeti is a leading mental health law expert in Canada, joins us to talk about consultation that the provincial government here in Ontario will undertake, looking at the possibility of moving people who are already in our criminal court system, so they've been charged with an offense, and then once they're before the courts, directing them, maybe they even get a light sentence of some kind. Few months, whatever the case may be, 2 years less a day in a provincial facility. And while in that system, we direct them to mandatory treatment for their addiction. I struggle with not being able to move people in that direction. Obviously, their addiction has led them into our criminal courts. And I know we talk about this often. You can't criminalize homelessness. You can't criminalize a health issue, which is addiction. I don't disagree that we don't have nearly enough supports available to folks who want/need them. But when we are talking about what's been described, and I think rightly so, as a crisis, an addictions crisis, that speaks to the depths of that crisis and suggests to me that what we've been doing is not working. It's just not. So we have many experts like Ms. Sigeti who tell us that the research is clear that mandatory treatment does not have effective results. Where are we going to go then? Because, again, what we have been doing clearly has not been working. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Lee, good morning.
Mike, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So the one thing I wanted to lead off with was that I think when you have a guest on that is so far on one side of the subject, that especially in an issue that affects the community this much, it would be good to have another guest that maybe presents the other side of the topic, because I think this gives us a bit of a skewed view. Some of the points I'd like to just kind of like pick at are how she presented that, there's no data that supports the other side of the coin, but we have all these studies that do support her opinion. And a lack of data doesn't really lead to a conclusion. That's number one. Number two, I believe that you could probably find a study that would counteract any study that she's presenting as absolute fact that might say the exact opposite, because a lot of times with subjects like this, these studies are performed by maybe less than neutral parties that do the study, and then presenting them as just an absolute fact where it's like, you can't argue. Experts have said this, and it's just like, well, experts will say whatever they want to say. They can design their study to say just about anything they want. And to imply, so then there was a lot of implications of like, okay, so you're going to put these people into mandatory treatment, and they might be a first-time user, and they might just be using poison drugs. That seems like a smoke screen. It seems like throwing smoke into this conversation to confuse people, because if she was being honest, she would probably have told the audience up front that mostly these are people that are completely addicted. They're not first-time users that are dying. That's number one. And number two, like, I have a cousin who's addicted to fentanyl, and his mother has just resolved herself to like, he is going to die someday, and the system does not work at all. And her saying like, well, the current system has a 0% death rate, and if you put them into forced rehabilitation, then that is definitely going to harm them. It's sort of like a one for another. And it implies,
what would I'm curiously sorry, but your cousin who is addicted, what would your aunt, what would his mother like to see done?
She has tried
to get him into a system but there's no room for him, or there's no support?
It just doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, exactly. Yeah.
So what the province is doing is something new. And I think what we can all agree on is that what's happening currently does not work. So an expert who is, profiting from the system that is, and probably joined this career because she's passionate about this specific thing, which definitely means that her view is kind of skewed to one perspective, saying that like this system is working. It's not working. It's terrible for the community. It's terrible for the people happening it. And there's just a few small and loud activists that are saying like, this is great. Anything you change is terrible, but like, we need to try something new. And maybe it doesn't work, but as she fully admitted, we don't have data that supports the counterpoint. So let's try this. Let's try something new. And if this doesn't work, again, we're not just going to go back to something that we already know doesn't work, which is what we have currently. Let's try something new again.
All right, Lee, I gotta run for the sake of time, but I hear where you're coming from. And I too struggle. I struggle mightily because logically, you look at where we were, where we're at, and now we're saying it hasn't been working. I agree with Lee on that point. But if you say too loudly that we must move towards mandatory treatment, then you are quickly accused from people with a different perspective of re-traumatizing people or bringing harm to them. It's tough. It's really difficult, I find, to have these nuanced conversations. I think if we start from the point where we acknowledge what's being done and what has been done recently is not working, how do we make it better? Maybe that's a starting point. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I have truly lost count of the number of times I have heard from somebody who has had an interaction with our healthcare system. Despite the long waits they sometimes endure, they speak to the compassionate care that they receive once into the system. We celebrate nurses in Ontario this week, and we also mark Mental Health Week. Those conversations coming up in the next 30 minutes on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio. Welcome to Nursing Week 2025. The unsung heroes of our healthcare system, certainly a group that deserves more praise, sometimes going, maybe oftentimes going, under-recognized. Ruby Amancho is the Communications Executive Network Officer with the Waterloo chapter of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario and joins us for a conversation. Ruby, good morning.
Hi, thank you, Mike. I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit about Nursing Week and RNAO.
I am happy to have you here to talk about this because I do believe that our nurses are often under-recognized in the system. So why, Ruby, does this week matter so much, Nurses Week?
Well, see, Nursing Week is an annual celebration of the nursing profession. It always coincides with the birthday of Florence Nightingale. She's the founder of modern nursing. It's really important because, it's kind of like the time where we are kind of like just celebrating. Like, it's such a proud moment, right, for nurses, because we are celebrating how much like nurses do for our community, for Ontario and for Waterloo especially. Right now, we are kind of like celebrating also the RNAO's 100 years of action and impact, and it's just such an important moment to recognize the dedication and leadership nurses bring to every aspect of healthcare, from hospitals and clinics to community programs and policymaking.
That 100 years is quite the milestone. 100 years of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. When you look back over that century, what impacts have nurses made, and in particular the association, over those 100 years?
Yeah, so nurses have been at the forefront of addressing so many critical health challenges. Some of the key issues RNAO has been advocating for has included staffing ratios to ensure nurses can provide the highest quality care. They're also advocating for enhancing harm reduction services to address the toxic drug crisis. And we are also advocating for a climate action plan. So we recognize the link between environmental health and public health. So because this year we are marking 100 years of RNAO, we're reflecting on that legacy of advocacy and action and looking ahead to the future to continue to drive positive change in healthcare.
So how, Ruby, do you mark Nurses Week? What sorts of celebrations and events are in store?
Absolutely. So this year, RNAO chapters from Region 4, which includes Waterloo, Wellington, Halton, Brampton, and Mississauga, is hosting a Red Carpet Nursing Week Gala. It's on May 8th at the Milton Banquet and Conference Center. It's really a chance to bring together nurses, nursing students, families, and community members for an evening of celebration. We'll have a 4-course meal dinner, awards recognizing nursing excellence, entertainment, and even a special performance by Cam Bogle. He's a rising Canadian country artist, and this night is just about recognizing the incredible work nurses do every day and giving back to those who give so much.
I was just reading this morning about the increasing levels of violence we're seeing in emergency rooms in hospitals across this province, and some now weapons detection systems being put in place, London being one of the areas where this is being tested out. And it just makes me think, because we've talked about it on the show quite a bit, the amount of violence that frontline healthcare professionals are facing. How are our nurses doing, Ruby, in this environment today?
Well, that's a great question. And honestly, our nurses have been through a lot, and even during the pandemic, and now the violence has always been there. It's just been underreported as well. However, we are resilient and we are calling in. That's why RNAO is so important, because we are calling the government. We're talking to our MPPs to create a safer space for nurses so that, we can retain and protect our nurses here in Ontario.
Ruby, I really appreciate your time on the show today. Thank you to you and your fellow nurses for everything you do for our healthcare system, and I wish you a very happy Nurses Week.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you all for all that you do. And most importantly, to every nurse out there, thank you. Your dedication makes a difference every day, and this celebration is for you. Enjoy the rest of your day, Ruby. Thanks very much. Bye, Mike. Ruby Amancho is the Communications Executive Network Officer with the Waterloo chapter of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. The RNAO marks a century this year, 100 years of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and this in celebration of what would have been Florence Nightingale's birthday is Nurses Week in Ontario. That note on the violence that I just came across in one of my newspapers this morning really hit home for me, because I know we've talked about it on the show in the past, but it kind of blows my mind that the person who is there to provide help and care to you is the person at whom you direct your violent behavior. And I guess, obviously, you are not meeting them and they are not meeting you on your best day. But hopefully, we can use conversations like this as a reminder of the importance of these healthcare professionals to our system overall. We mark Nurses Week this week in Ontario. We are also marking Mental Health Week, and it's important to normalize the conversations while we raise awareness as to the importance of taking care of our mental health. We'll have that conversation next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Along with celebrating Nurses Week here in Ontario, this also marks the beginning of Mental Health Week. In fact, this Mental Health Week from today the 5th through Sunday the 11th is in the midst of Mental Health Awareness Month. Tracy Elop is the Executive Director at Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health, and she joins the program to talk about it. And Tracy, I wonder about a week like this, Mental Health Week. Is this about awareness raising? Is this about reminding us of the importance of our mental health? Is it maybe a little bit of all of the above here?
All of the above, Mike. We know that mental health affects so many people in our community, and it's really important to have a time where we just reinforce the importance of talking about that and making sure that people understand the extent to which someone might be struggling.
Something you just said there really caught my ear when you said talking about that. And I think that's something we're getting better at. Certainly over my time working in this industry, we are talking more about mental health and the impacts that various events have on our mental health. But I suspect maybe too we have room to grow in that department, don't we?
For sure we do. I'm happy that we're starting to recognize that there can't be health without mental health. And for so many years, decades, we just didn't talk about it. And the reality of it is that behind every door, someone could be struggling with their well-being. It could be your neighbor, a friend, a coworker, even someone in your own home. And it affects everyone across all demographics and populations, and even those people who seem as if they have it all together could be struggling in behind that.
So as we have this conversation today, Tracy, and we begin Mental Health Week, are there things that maybe we could be doing individually just to kind of pause for a moment, check in on ourselves?
For sure. I think people don't necessarily understand the signs of when they're having a mental health challenge. So people who themselves, or they see these things in others, where you feel like you're constantly exhausted, you have trouble focusing, you're feeling distant from loved ones, you're pulling away from things that you used to enjoy doing. And those are all signs that we might need a little bit more care and attention on our mental health. And I think, going to the talking, the more we have open and honest conversations about our mental health, the more people understand that they can be vulnerable with each other, and that we can start to really address these in an open and honest way. And the first thing that happens when you are able to identify it is that you can go and get a little bit of help for it.
You kind of read my mind in that department, because help does exist. And I know one of the places that it does exist is at Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health. How can we access services, and what is available to us?
For sure. The thing about Camino is that we're here for everyone. We talk so much about being a place where there's no financial barrier to getting service. But anyone across the community can come into Camino. We have many, many skilled professional counselors who are trained and accredited and deeply committed to walking alongside people as they work to strengthen their mental health and well-being. So anyone can come in and call us or connect with us online and book an appointment. We offer appointments in person or virtual, and we have lots of groups and workshops that run at no cost as well.
How is Camino able to do the work that it does?
Well, because there's no financial barrier, we do rely on donations. And also, when people come into Camino who do have the ability to pay, or who have access to workplace benefits, the money that we get, a portion of that is able to help those who aren't able to pay. And I think it's just, we feel really privileged to have an open door kind of approach where everyone is welcome to come, and we believe in mental health for everyone. One of the things that we've implemented, because there are some wait times, is everyday quick response and drop-in service. So anyone, anywhere can come into either our Queen Street or our Charles Street location and get same-day service.
What does a week like this, a month like this, where we put the focus on mental health, where we have conversations like this one, what does this week, this month mean to you, Tracy?
It means breaking down the stigma. It means giving people the opportunity to really check in on themselves and their neighbors and friends, and really, really listen and open up the conversation. One of the things that I think is important is people who might be listening, who are in one of those professions where people tend to open up to you. It is an opportunity for people like hairstylists or barbers or massage therapists, like people in those professions that don't equate themselves to mental health, to being able to listen to your friends, your family, asking those questions about how people are really doing. We know it's a very difficult time right now for so many reasons, and many people are struggling with stress, anxiety, burnout, loneliness, and depression. And this week and this month, if we could all just be a little bit more open and be more vulnerable to sharing about how we're really doing, that can go a long way.
Do you remain optimistic? I feel like we've been talking about this, and this was sort of the parallel pandemic back during COVID. We knew there was going to be, and there has been, an impact on mental health. The challenges are myriad. Do you remain optimistic that, yes, health includes mental health?
I do, because I'm a generally optimistic person, and every year I think we get better and better at sharing, and who knows where we're going to be. But yes, I think there's hope, and we just all have to take initiative and understand that we each have a role to play in making sure that we destigmatize this.
Tracy, really appreciate the work that you do and the time you've given us on the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Tracy Elop is the executive director at Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health. It's okay to not be okay, and mental health is part of our overall health. Some of the messaging as we enter a mental health week here in Canada. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just ahead of our 10:30 update in the 570 News Center, let's get back to the phones. And always like to hear from you on the show. Andre, good morning.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Mike. Two things. One is I'm calling because I hear from people that there is no entry right now. There is no room to get into help for mental psychiatrists, psychology, and all that stuff. My second point is I am very grateful to all the young kids, teenagers that I can name, not name, but I can tell you at least 10 people that they are going in school to be that in the future because they feel how much stress, depression, traumatized, and all that stuff has done to us. And they're living it too. So kudos to the young ones. They're our future.
Thanks, Andre. Appreciate the call. And that's why organizations like Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health exist, and so many others. They want to make sure there is low barrier, no financial barrier access to care. But of course, that doesn't happen easily. We know that the system in general is underfunded. We talk an awful lot about mental health supports. So fundraising becomes a key part of continuing to do what they do. But they want to make sure they're here for the community and many other organizations like them. So let's continue to normalize the conversations and support those organizations that do ensure that there is care available when we need it. Something that struck me in that conversation with Tracy Elop from Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health is that those who can pay or who enter through the doors with a workplace benefits plan that allows the services to be covered, those folks can help to subsidize for those who cannot afford to pay for the services. And I think that's the whole idea of it takes a village, right? All right, we're coming up on an update from the 570 News Center. And then let's check in with our food bank of Waterloo Region, this being Mental Health Awareness Month. What's the connection between food security and our mental health? We'll explore that next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Well, we have just finished a federal election. We get a chance this morning to talk about food insecurity, the use of food assistance in the region, and the role that elected officials can play in addressing hunger, not to mention the impact of food inflation in this country. And we just had the conversation before that update with Colin about Mental Health Week. There is a connection between food security or insecurity and our mental health. So we can get into all of that and what's coming up later this month with our friends at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region as CEO Kim Wilhelm joins me in studio. Long time no see. Weren't we just drinking whiskey and wine together on Saturday?
Yes, it was such a great night. So good.
Whiskey and wine in the warehouse was an excellent event, and you would not have recognized the Food Bank of Waterloo Region the way it was done up.
No, my team worked so incredibly hard to literally transform that space. It looked like you were walking into another building. They did such a great job.
They really did. It was a great event. Got to meet a lot of great people, have some good conversations. But let's dive into our conversations this morning here, and starting with, and I got a chance to hear a little bit of this on Saturday at the event, which is great. But food insecurity, Kim, what does that look like in Waterloo Region today?
Well, we're still collecting our April numbers, but what I can tell you about March is we were just 100 people away from hitting another record-breaking number. We did see a little bit of a small dip in February, but we think that was because of some of the rebate checks that came from the government. Don't know 100%, but it's a good thing to suggest. But it's clear that households are continuing to feel the squeeze each and every day when they go to the grocery store, when they're just out and about. Looking back over the first 3 months of 2025, more than 37,000 adults and children, 37,000 relied on a food hamper program. That was 13,000 unique individuals. So when we talk about unique individuals, that's somebody that's accessed a food hamper program one or more times. And between January and March, those 13,000 unique individuals saw over 153,000 visits.
I'm sure you're looking forward to a time that we're not talking about record-breaking numbers.
I am. It just seems like this is something that each and every month, it's either a record-breaking number or close to a record-breaking number. Something has to give.
So we have just come through a week ago today, in fact, a federal election here in Canada. And in our region, we've got some newly elected faces in the MP's seats. So how does the food bank hope to work with these elected officials? And what would you hope to see from them when it comes to addressing this great need of food insecurity?
Well, I had to pause there for a moment when you said a week ago, because it feels like so long ago, if I'm going to be honest. But first of all, I just want to congratulate all the elected officials on their election wins. And I'm really looking forward to working together and having important conversations about what it's going to take to create long-term solutions to food insecurity. Right now, as we talked about, food insecurity is at a record levels right across the country. But that doesn't exclude Waterloo Region. More and more people are struggling to afford just the basic needs like food, rent, transportation. And it's clear that the systems meant to support people, they aren't keeping up. So over the next weeks and months, I'm looking forward to reaching out and meeting with these elected officials to share what we're seeing on the ground right now. And we'll be talking about the growing need of food assistance and the need for real sustainable investments that go beyond the short-term fixes and things that are actually addressing the root causes of hunger. So what does that mean? That means we need to rebuild Canada's safety net so individuals and families have access to the supports that they need when they need them, whether it's through stronger income supports, enhanced employment insurance, or other targeted programs that are going to reduce poverty. We also need to address the affordable housing crisis. Well, we've come a little way. We're certainly still have a long road ahead of us. And this is putting huge pressure on low and moderate income households. When rent takes up most or all of a family's income, there's not much left for food. And then finally, we need to support low-income workers. Many of them are working at least one full-time, maybe multiple jobs, and they still can't make ends meet. Every single person deserves to be able to afford food and other essentials, no matter what their employment status is.
Okay, let's talk about food inflation in Canada, Kim. The overall inflation rate has been slowing, but food prices, as we know, have risen faster than the general inflation rate, which leads to higher grocery bills for us when we're out doing our shopping. The 2025 Canada's Food Price Report predicts families will spend up to $801 more on food this year. That's a projected overall price increase of 3 to 5%. What does this mean for those low-income households that you just talked about?
I feel like every time I go to the grocery store, I still continue to get sticker shock. Food inflation in Canada is hitting hard. And for people who are already experiencing food insecurity, the impact can be devastating. When you're struggling to make ends meet, even small increases in food prices can lead to tough choices. And we've talked about these tough choices before, and maybe I should reframe that to impossible choices. Buying less food, skipping meals, or you're settling for cheaper, less nutritious options. Higher food costs just don't affect the grocery bill. They force trade-offs. So there could be other essential items like housing, transportation needs. Maybe it's transportation to get you to and from your job. And if you're not able to get to and from your job, that's also a real problem. So what we're seeing is people end up maybe skipping meals so that they can afford that transportation. And why should anyone have to make these impossible choices? So as grocery bills go up, more and more people are turning to food banks and community programs for help. And in Waterloo Region, as I said, we're seeing the record high demands, putting a lot of pressure on our food assistance programs here in Waterloo Region that are doing so much to try and ensure that people have the food if and when they need it.
We're in conversation this morning with Kim Wilhelm. She's the CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. We'll talk about making healthy foods more accessible and a couple of events coming up later this month that we'll get into as we continue the conversation this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Kim Wilhelm is the CEO of the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. She joins us monthly here so we can update what food security or insecurity looks like in our community these days. First Monday of every month at 10:30. Kim is here with us, and we've talked about the numbers, which in in March, just shy of another record number of visits, 13,000 unique visits to the food bank, with a federal election now in the rear view. How does Kim work with newly elected officials to move forward, advance some priorities when it comes to food assistance? And we talked about food inflation in this country. We know families are spending more than $800 more this year than they did last. Let's, Kim, talk about healthy food and how much less accessible that becomes. Mm-hmm. So that impacts people's overall health if they can't get access to healthier foods. How does that in turn affect their mental health as we're now into Mental Health Month?
That's a really great question, especially during Mental Health Week. And I think that most people don't really think about the connection between food and mental health. But if we think about it, just something that we've all experienced, we all have that child, relative, spouse who becomes hangry when they don't eat. We've all experienced that at some time or another. But take that a little bit further, and what that individual would be like day after day after day with not enough calories, not enough nutrition. People may think that they're not a good kid, that they're always acting out, but it's just likely due to poor nutrition. When people don't have reliable access to enough food, it creates constant layers of stress as well and anxiety. It can lead to feelings of shame, depression, social isolation, especially when someone is doing everything they can and they still can't afford the basics. Mental health isn't just about what's happening in your mind. It's also shaped by what's happening in your life. And if someone is regularly skipping meals, worrying about how to feed themselves or their children, or choosing between groceries or rent, it really takes a serious toll. I know some research has been done from a proof program at the University of Toronto, and it shows that when you lack food, you're more likely to experience things like depression, anxiety, mood swings, or even having thoughts about hurting yourself. And those are some stories folks may have seen in the news over the last couple of years with some of my partners in other cities, where people have said that they would rather die than live in poverty. Let that sink in for a second.
Yeah, no kidding. Rather die than live in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
May the 28th, a few weeks' time. I know there are a couple of events coming up, one global, one local. What can you tell us about them?
Well, today is a big day for us because the 27th annual Empty Bowls event, which is held at Wilfrid Laurier University's Lazarides Hall, tickets go on sale today. That event is happening on May 28th, but tickets go on sale today. And for those who have been to the event before, but those who haven't as well, sometimes ticket sales sell out within a day and a half. So don't delay. get your ticket. And when you attend this event, you get to choose a one-of-a-kind bowl that's handcrafted and donated by local artists. It's a keepsake bowl that you get to use during the event, but then also take it home, put it on display, or use it every day. But this event has been going on for 27 years. You can get tickets at thefoodbank.ca/empty bowls. But like I said, fair warning, they sell it so fast. We also have coming up World Hunger Day, and that's also on May 28th. And it's a day to shine light on the global fight against hunger and food insecurity. The numbers are staggering, like we've said, and according to the World Health Organization, 2.3 billion people around the world are facing moderate to severe food insecurity. That's a just staggering number.
Okay, we talked earlier, Kim, about how our newly elected officials can support food assistance programs, the relationships you hope to build with those new faces in the region after that federal election. But the rest of us in the community can obviously play a role. How can we help the work that you're doing at the food bank?
Well, we've talked about poverty. Policy change, is critical, and community support is just so important to us. As a community-funded organization, we would not be able to do the work without our community support. And there's a few meaningful ways that people can get involved. First of all, if you have room in your budget and you can make a financial donation, every dollar goes a long way, and we can turn 2 meals for every dollar donated, which is incredible. Saturday, you would have heard that we are looking to buy a new truck to ensure that our deliveries get to the agencies, and that comes with a big price tag. So we're looking for donations to support this truck. That's going to cost us over $230,000. If you have room left in your budget and you can make a non-perishable food donation when you're out at the grocery store, consider picking something up that's high in protein, low in sodium, and leave it in the bin on your way out the door. And another way, grab your coworkers, your family members, your church group, any type of group together and consider hosting a food and fun drive. That's a fun, engaging way. And then bring everybody to the food bank and you can sort the food that you've collected. It's a really fun, engaging ways. And finally, if you have time in your day and you can volunteer your time, whether that's helping to sort food at our warehouse or supporting special events that the food bank is doing, please go to our website at thefoodbank.ca and see all the various ways that you can support us.
Congratulations again on a great event,
Thank
Wine
you.
and Whiskey in the Warehouse on Saturday. And thanks for all the work that you do and for being here this morning.
Thanks, Mike.
Kim Wilhelm is the CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. She joins us on the first Monday of every month at 10:30 to update us on food insecurity in our community. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just a quick question for you. I know I'm always the one asking questions on this show, right? Don't forget, noon to 1, open phone lines. Today it's rant or rave. Rant because you're upset about something, rave because you're happy about it. You can ask questions then if you want. I'll answer them. Anyway, my quick question for you is, could you use $2,500 right about now? Like, just think about it. Putting $2,500 in your jeans later this week. What would you do with another $2,500? Maybe plan a little getaway, update that wardrobe, whatever you want to do. $2,500 cash could be yours thanks to TLC Pet Food in New Hamburg. It's really that simple. TLC Pet Food is our partner on the Farwell for Hire 50/50 raffle, which is underway. We launched it last Thursday. The jackpot, more than $28,000 already. We are climbing fast. I love it. That means your take-home prize is more than $14,000 already. We're going to award that jackpot at the end of the month. I want it to grow and grow and grow and grow. But thanks to TLC Pet Food, this Friday, an early bird prize of $2,500 in cash will be awarded. Just like that. All you need is a ticket. Ticket packages start at just $10. You can get those tickets right now at cf5050.ca, cf5050.ca. Get a ticket. Be in for that early bird cash prize on Friday of $2,500. And even if you win the $2,500 on Friday, your ticket is still eligible for the big jackpot that we'll be drawing at the end of the month. So let that all sink in. This Friday, we could put $2,500 in your pocket. All you got to do is buy a 50-50 ticket for as little as $10. You can spend more if you want. It's entirely up to you. Just visit cf5050.ca and get in on that early bird prize before Friday at noon. And remember, with every ticket purchased, you are helping us raise important money for research into a cure or control for cystic fibrosis, literally helping kids in our community breathe easier. Win-win, right? cf5050.ca. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead you? Who'd have thought they'd lead you? Back here where we need you. We got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Let me tell you something that I have always loved. TV theme shows, the songs for the TVs, the TV shows, the theme songs that end up on your radio. When I was a kid, I absolutely loved that the theme to The Greatest American Hero was played on the radio. Loved that show as a kid. Loved the theme song. We had Friends on in the background this weekend at home and couldn't help but notice the Rembrandts with the theme song, I'll Be There For You. And I'm like, don't you miss good TV show theme songs? And I used to get to play that one right there by John Sebastian when I was working in music radio many years ago. I still get a kick out of it. And I always get a kick out of this weekly segment, Monday mornings at 11 with musicologist Brian Allison. It is This Week in Music History. Good morning, Mr. Allison.
Hi, Mike.
How are you, my friend?
I'm awesome. How are you today?
I'm also excellent, thank you. I'm going to remind you, too, to check Brian's Facebook page by the same name, This Week in Music History. Some of the tidbits we don't get to on the show you might find on the Facebook page. The tidbit I want to start with, though, Brian, even though I started the show talking about not wanting to talk about Donald Trump anymore, I can't resist this one because the Stones had a little problem with the U.S. president.
They had a big problem with him. Yeah, so it was May 4th, 2016 that the Rolling Stones filed a cease and desist order to stop Donald Trump from using their music. He had used the song Start Me Up during his campaign following his victory speech celebrating his path to the Republican nomination. The Stones did not like that. They said, no way, not going to happen. So they filed the cease and desist order to the Trump campaign, said, you know what, you're not allowed to use our music anymore. And a bunch of other artists followed suit. Blondie, Sheryl Crow, Green Day, Lionel Richie, Elvis Costello, Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, all of them came forward and said, yeah, you know what, not using our music anyways. We're not really down with that. So very, very big piece of controversy within the Trump campaign was, and of course, Trump came out against almost every single one of those musicians, saying how he didn't like them. What are your thoughts on politicians, quote unquote, borrowing songs from artists?
Don't do it.
Campaign?
No, none of us should do that. It's their work. It's their creativity. If they offer it or if you ask, that's one thing, but leave it alone.
Or you're going to pay them. Right?
Sure.
You want to pay them some money? Hey, I'm going to pay you $1 million and I'm going to use Start Me Up to promote my campaign. And the Stones say, sure, okay, we'll take the $1 million, but I think you need the permission too. only the right thing to do.
I couldn't agree more. A lot of people know this artist by his most common, I guess I will say, name, but I think some might remember the original name, Reginald Dwight.
Yeah, and it was This Week in Music History that Reginald Dwight, he was a keyboard player in a band that was sort of struggling at the time. They were called Bluesology, and they were on a U.S. tour and flying back to the UK. And Reginald Dwight was considering, what he could do in terms of a solo career. And he kind of realized at that point, if I'm going to go solo, I can't be Reginald Dwight. That's just not going to look good on a marquee anywhere, probably. So he thought to himself, what can I do for a name? And he consulted with the band's horn player, whose name was Elton Dean, and the lead singer of Bluesology was a guy named Long John Baldry. And he asked them if he could appropriate their names, and he put Elton and John together, and Elton John was born on May 7th, 1968.
See, there you go. Much like we think that candidates in presidential elections should ask for permission, Reginald sought the permission of Elton Dean and Long John Baldry to come up with his new name.
And there is a story that both of them kind of said, yeah, but, that's great, and it sounds cool. Elton John's a cool name, but you should stay with our band. We're going to do really well. And he was kind of like, yeah, okay, maybe, but I got this other guy I'm writing songs with, and it's going really well, and I think it's fair to say Reginald Dwight made the right decision.
Absolutely. We started today with some John Sebastian to enter it because Welcome Back enters our conversation on This Week in Music History.
Yep, May 8th, 1976. So John Sebastian, he was the lead singer for the Lovin' Spoonful. They had some reasonable success back in the 60s. And he wrote this song called Welcome Back, which ended up being used as the theme to Welcome Back Kotter, which we all loved. And it hit the top of the charts, number 1, on May the 8th, 1976. So pretty cool. I remember that song so well, the TV show, and, singing along to it every time it came on the TV for sure. What was your favorite TV theme show that became a hit, Mike? There's been quite a few of them.
There really have. I mean, I did love, as I alluded to at the beginning, Believe It or Not by Joey Scarberry from The Greatest American Hero.
Great song.
Dukes of Hazzard, Waylon Jennings. I loved the Dukes of Hazzard theme. And how about, do you remember Bosom Buddies? Tom Hanks, Peter Scolari, and they used My Life by Billy Joel as the TV theme song.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's right. And, of course, you mentioned the Friends one, which was a number 1 hit. I know you're a Happy Days fan. The theme from Happy Days hit number 5 in 1976 as well, sung by Pratt and McLean. There was Bad Boys by Inner Circle, which, of course, was the theme for Cops. And the one that probably doesn't get mentioned as much was Those Were the Days, the theme to All in the Family, which factually was written by Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton. And they hit number 43 in 1972.
Excellent pieces of trivia. And along those lines, the longest album title in recorded music history, I thought the one we're going to talk about was, We'll get to that in just a moment with Brian Allison, our musicologist who joins us every Monday at 11 for This Week in Music History. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page of the same name. This Week in Music History continues. The longest album title in recorded music history. Coming up, this is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Monday morning at 11, we are joined by musicologist Brian Allison, who treats us to some history with This Week in Music History. Remembering, let's say, how about 1972, Brian? I would have thought that this album by T-Rex was the longest in recorded music history.
So it did in 1972. So May 6, 1972, Tyrannosaurus Rex, or T-Rex as they're mostly known, released a double album. And at the time, it had the longest album title in history, which was Prophets, Seers, and Sages and the Angels of the Ages / My People Were Fair and Had Sky in Their Hair, but Now They're Content to Wear Stars on Their Brows. That was the title of the album. And people went, whew, that's a mouthful. But they put it out that way. It went to number 1 in the UK, It was not the longest title in music history, though. There is one much longer.
Really? Much longer. I would have had to Google, so you got me stumped on this one. Prophets, seers, and sages, and the angels of the ages, / my people were fair and had sky in their hair, but now they're content to wear stars on their brows, is not the longest title.
Blown away in 2008 by Chumbawamba, and you might remember Chumbawamba had the hit Tub Thumping that was kind of everywhere back in the early 2000s. They put out an album in 2008, an astonishing 156 words, 552 characters in the titles. If you'd like me to recite it, I will take a deep breath and do it.
I want you to recite it. I hate to put you to so much work, but let's go.
This is the title of the album, and it's been shortened to the first 5 words. Most people refer to it. The first 5 words are "The boy bands have won," but this is the full title of the album, and it says this on the album. Deep breath. The boy bands have won, and all the copyists and the tribute bands and the TV talent show producers have won. And if we allow our culture to be shaped by mimicry, whether from the lack of ideas or from exaggerated respect, you should never try to freeze culture. What you can do is recycle that culture. Take your older brother's hand-me-down jacket and restyle it, refashion it to the point where it becomes your own. But don't just regurgitate creative history or hold art and music and literature as fixed, untouchable, and kept under glass. The people who try to guard any particular form of music are like the copyists and manufactured bands, doing it the worst disservice, because the only thing that you can do to music that will damage it is not change it, not make it your own, because then it dies, then it's over, then it's done, and the boy bands have won. Whew.
Wow.
That is an official album title.
Okay, so I true confessions here, Brian. I really, and I do mean really, loved Tub Thumping, the album, not just the song, but the album Tub Thumping. Or is it Tub Thumper? No, Tub Thumper was the song.
Yep, Tub Thumping was the song.
Tub Thumping was the song, so Tub Thumper was the album. Anyway,
yeah.
I loved it. And it prompted me to buy the follow. I had Tub Thumping as like my number 1 album in my top 10 for the longest time because I enjoyed it so much. Then along came What You See Is What You Get, and I'm like, I don't think I get Chumbawamba anymore.
Well, they were by definition an anarchist band.
Sure.
That's how they started off. And I think, my feeling about this album title, "The Boy Bands Have Won, ... is that it was put out intentionally in order to gain the attention of the media and maybe even to get in the record book to say, well, we have the longest title of an album in history at 156 words. I think that was part of the marketing plan. But yeah, when it landed, people were kind of like, because it was printed on the front of the album. That's all that was printed. There wasn't room for anything else. And people were like, "This is going to be your album title?" And they were like, "That's our album title." And the statement, when you actually read it, I mean, it's kind of true.
I have true, difficult to disagree with, for sure.
It's pretty awesome little bit of information. But yeah, there you go. They beat out Tyrannosaurus Rex by a huge factor.
They certainly did. Okay, on This Week in 1986, a song that I still love to this day. I guess I was just the right age and it was the right time for this Austrian act to come around for me.
Yeah, May 10th, 1986, Falco went to number 1 in the UK single with Rock Me Amadeus. And, of course, the movie Amadeus had been out. And I'm not sure if... I'm guessing this was, Falco's tribute to that whole film piece, and he designed the song after it. But nevertheless, he became the first Australian act to score a UK and US number 1 single, and the first German-speaking artist to achieve a number 1 on the US chart. So that had never been done before. And the song, I can't remember. I should go back and listen to it. Was it all in Austrian or was some of it English? I mean, obviously, Rock Me Amadeus was English, but was there some Austrian in it as well? I can't remember how that went with that song.
You and me both. And I've always been terrible with the lyrics, but I just remember, obviously, the chorus, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It was a huge hit, and it was very infectious. And Falco passed away in 1998, and, it was a terrible accident that had killed him. But, his estate claims that he sold 20 million albums and 15 million singles, and that would make him the best-selling Austrian singer of all time. So the late Falco hitting number 1 with Rock Me Amadeus in 1986. Pretty big moment.
Absolutely love it. Okay, let's go back further than that, a little more than 50 years now. and really earliest days of one of the greatest rock and rollers to ever grace a stage.
Yes, for sure. So May 9th, 1979, this young up-and-comer, whose name was Bruce Springsteen, was opening a show for Bonnie Raitt at the Harvard Square Theater in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He was a relative newcomer, but was starting to make some ripples in the music industry. And there was a very, very important figure in the audience that night. It was rock critic John Landau. And he wrote in the Boston, the Real Paper, the next day, his statement was, quote, "I have seen rock and roll's future, and his name is Bruce Springsteen." And that really was the jump start that Bruce's career needed. From then on, it skyrocketed. He went and recorded Born to Run, which John Landau ended up becoming his manager and his co-producer, and co-produced Born to Run. So it was really, really a huge moment for Springsteen having John Landau in that crowd that night, writing that article and giving Bruce the credit that he certainly deserved. And, it's just, I don't need to say what Bruce went on to do. Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band became one of the biggest bands in the world, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I saw them last November in Toronto, probably in the top 2 shows that I've ever seen in terms of amazing, like just a great band. Every song you can sing along to, lots of energy, incredible artist.
Yeah, we saw that same show when he was in Buffalo, and I amazed still at what this guy pulls off at his age.
Really, 75 years old too, and I'm there with my mother-in-law who is 75 years old, and we're watching this guy on stage, and I'm just going, oh my God, like what is this guy made of that he can still put on a 3-hour show with all of this energy? I mean, Bruce was like soaked to the bone by the time the show finished with sweat. So he's all hard.
He certainly is. And quickly, as we let you go today, Brian, a couple of notable birthdays this week, slightly different genres, but 2 guys I definitely enjoy in Bob Seger and Bono.
Yeah, huge birthdays. Bob Seger tomorrow will turn 80 years old.
Man.
I can hardly believe that. That just doesn't even register for me. He's now retired from touring. He did his final tour a couple of years ago, which was fantastic. But yeah, Bob's turning 80, and Bono on May 10th will turn 65 years old. So Bono will be able to collect his Social Security at the end of the week, which I'm sure he's going to need.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah, it'll come in handy for him, for sure.
He's probably having trouble making ends meet.
Brian, it's always fun. Thanks for taking us down a musical memory lane once again.
Love talking to you, Mike. See you next Monday.
You betcha. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Brian Allison, musicologist, who joins us every Monday morning at this time. For this week in music history, we have lots of fun with it. I hope you do too. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings are always interesting on the program. From this week in music history, little trip down a musical memory lane to Drewe's views. And David Drewe and I have not yet had opportunity to talk since the election. I mean, David was here on election day, but what of the results of that election? David's already here. Turn on your microphone. Put on your headphones. Come on. Don't just sit there like a lump. Good morning.
Hi, Mom. I'm here.
It was interesting last week, wasn't it?
It absolutely was, but now you're stealing all my content.
Well, I haven't got any content yet,
okay.
So I'm just going to make it up.
Let me lead with this then, Mike.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. Mike, I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Who could it be?
Believe it or not, Mike, it's just me.
Well done, sir. Very well done.
Both of us are laughing and no one else.
No, there might be a couple. There might be a couple who can pick up the Joey Scarberry Greatest American Hero reference. But clearly you were listening on the way here. Kudos to you. Thank you for that. It's Pierre Poilievre who's walking on air all the way out to whatever the name of that riding is in Alberta, where he will be gifted a seat.
Look, Pierre Poilievre is almost the least interesting part of this in a way. I got to say, I'm kind of happy with the results. I almost feel like we have the majority we need right now because between the NDP and the Conservatives, nobody's going to be pulling any shenanigans in the near term. And in the meantime, we get a chance to assess the new guy.
All right. That's a very optimistic tone you strike,
I'm
David.
trying.
He is trying. We're going to get into it in greater depth right after this update from the 570 News Center. David Drewe, who spent considerable time in his career on the Hill. He knows a thing or two about the inner workings of Ottawa. He's here for Drewe's Views next on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? I haven't seen hide nor shaggy head of that boy in 4 years. But you'd know him if you met him. Played harmonica like the cat lost his balls. Yep, Crazy Dave. Had a toothy smile as big as my hand. Always chewed on a toothpick or a long blade of grass, drank from the bottle, rolled the worst cigarettes, was impervious to insect bites. It's one of the best damn tree-planting highballers east of Prince George.
That is our friend, David Drewe. That wasn't actually written and or performed for him, but it seems appropriate on so many levels.
It often was requested by me.
Thank you, Scott Wicken. Thank you for being you. David owns Negotiating Change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies. He also is a former Conservative Party staffer in this community, and he joins us every Monday morning, 11:30, to share his views. Drewe's Views. Where do you want to begin on what in HE double hockey sticks happened last week?
It's really hard to say. I heard one pundit on the weekend talking about, well, based on the exit polls, and right away I was just like, and I'm not going to name what party this person was speaking for, but I just wanted to slap them with a fish. I don't know that we have any exit polls anywhere in Canada. I've never actually heard of exit polls being done by media or anywhere else. That is something that is done in America, where you can cross-reference data so much better than we can. You know, they can go to Zellers or any private place and buy all the data they want on the people and cross-reference it with theirs. We can't do that here because of privacy laws. So exit polls, no, we don't have them. So you don't really know what exactly happened. You don't know why Kitchener South and Cambridge flipped and Waterloo and Kitchener-Conestoga didn't. You don't know what the motivations were. Now, there's been speculation that the areas where Conservatives won, it's that manufacturing was heavy, and so they are more at threat of tariffs. There's also been the speculation that crime is a more serious issue in those areas, not necessarily because crime is more prevalent, but because the nature of the ethnic communities values crime as an issue more. But we don't know why. We don't know what it was about these communities. And that is, like, how does Cambridge flip and Kitchener-Conestoga doesn't? We don't know. And that's what makes it so fascinating, because we have this example here, but Liberals lost 9 seats across Ontario. We don't know why. We don't really know the specifics of why. Yeah, the NDP collapsed, but we don't know why some of their votes went to the Conservatives and why the others went to the Liberals, and why it was so radically different in different ridings. And until we know that, there's a whole lot that we don't know. But what's really fascinating to steal it, yeah, Pierre Poilievre lost his riding. And so what happens next? It looks like he's going to stay on. And I think last time I was on, it was the case for keeping Pierre I was making. And all of that stands, but I was like, but that all depends on him winning a seat.
Wow.
And it turns out, no, that didn't matter on that at all anyway.
And let's just remind folks that the man who is here for you, the average working Canadian, and keeping things affordable, is now going to be spending money on a by-election and will continue living in the official residence of the opposition that you are paying for. Thank you very much.
I don't know that he is.
Is he not?
Well, I'm assuming he will, but technically and the Conservatives have to elect a leader to be the leader in the House. And the leader of the opposition is a parliamentary function. So whoever the Conservatives elect as their interim leader, that's the person who will get the keys to the mansion. But I don't think there's any rules about, him renting it out.
Right. And hanging around until this by-election can happen, which could be mid-ish June at the earliest, I do believe is the calculation, right?
I thought it would be mid-ish June would be the earliest it could be called. because there's a period you have to wait after a resignation is formal. Honestly, I'm not even sure.
I think it's 11 days, and then you have the writ period. 11 days is the earliest. Anyway,
yeah.
Bottom line is it can happen this summer.
Yes. My understanding, I think we're in sync on that. It's not going to be Pierre Poilievre serving in the House as leader until the fall session.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And whether or not whoever the leader is on an interim basis gives him the keys to the castle,
But
I don't think he's going
if
anywhere.
you'd have gone up to any Conservative and said, you're going to get 42% of the vote, you are going to get 1 million more votes out of Ontario than Doug Ford got. If you were to say that to them, they'd be like, we've got this in the bag.
That's the wildest part to me.
And Pierre Poilievre lost his seat.
I know.
Like, this is there in a way you can kind of understand it. He was away from his riding more this time than any other time. He was now the face of the party proposing the civil service cuts as opposed to one of its members. There was a whole lot of traction coming against him. But as soon as I heard from legitimate sources that they were moving volunteers out of other swing ridings to put into the leader's riding, then it's like, yeah, this is real. He has something serious. I didn't think he was going to lose. I really thought it was going to be close, but what was the turnout in his riding? It was like 80-some%. Yeah, that's the sign you've kicked a hornet's nest. His vote went up from last election, and he lost decisively. Like, wow.
How?
Well, he's in a heavily civil servant area. He was the face of the negativity. And also, it's just like, everywhere else. It was the perfect storm against. I don't.
So how would you like to be Prime Minister Mark Carney now? Because not only did Pierre Poilievre lose his seat, but Jagmeet Singh lost his, expected. But Elizabeth May, the lone Green MP, is the only other party leader that's going to start this next session with you.
So what are the words that I'm allowed to use that are the synonyms for prostitute? Because I know I get in trouble sometimes when I cross these lines, but Elizabeth May has been one of those.
Okay.
Did you hear her? Oh, I'd love to serve as speaker. I'd be willing to serve in their cabinet if they wanted me. It's like, you're just looking for a reason to be there. Like, you should have thought of that before you ran if you have no, like,
Not a fan? Is that what I'm hearing?
Why couldn't she have lost and Mike Morris won? I just think it would have been, I don't picture him embarrassing the party by walking around trying to prostitute himself like that. But yeah, for Mark Carney, I thought his press conference last week was absolutely hilarious because you'd been having the NDP talking about, well, we do have enough seats for the balance of power. And maybe the price for that would be official party status because they didn't qualify for it. And then Mark Carney's asked about, the NDP just says no.
Which is good. I'm very happy he's not taking advantage of that.
I am too. But then the reporter says, why not? And did you remember what his answer was?
Why?
Yeah, that was just the best. Why? It was Ottawa never sits that question. It's always why not in Ottawa. It's never why. It's just like kaboom. Like, how do they even? Who would he be dealing with? And okay, so I give you party status, but then how long does that get me?
You mentioned before the break, and I'm curious about this, that you don't think we'll see the usual shenanigans that we see in a minority parliament. I'm a little more concerned.
I said I don't think we'll see them for a while.
For a while, okay.
So you know what I mean?
Because the NDP and Conservatives have to amalgamate their feces, as I like to say.
Correlate, yes.
Yes.
So he has this spring session, which he can extend. And my gosh, the Parliament hasn't sat since Christmas. You'd think there'd be a little bit of work piled up, maybe. So they sit down, and it sounds from his press conference like he's got a plan A, plan B, plan C that he's going to be tabling in terms of the response to Trump. Got some substantial work to do. He said, though, that he will not be pulling any shenanigans himself with the date of the by-election for Pierre Poilievre. He's not going to pull any shenanigans, it seems, with Stornoway. How long does this goodwill last? Because I don't think anybody really wants an election. Even the Conservatives, they've got to take time to read the tea leaves and figure out where they fell short. And it's really easy as somebody, as a Conservative, to sit there and say, yeah, but it was the perfect storm. It was the perfect storm for Donald Trump, and Mark Carney coming in at the perfect time, and yeah, that's true. But you can't count on it not being, you have to look at what went wrong. You can't just say it was the perfect storm. I remember back Stephen Harper. He came up short, and Paul Martin got his minority government, and the legend about that was Stephen Harper won 40 seats and considered a loss. Paul Martin lost 40 seats and considered it a victory. This, both teams came up higher in seats of the two parties. They both came up crazy higher in the popular vote, but Mark Carney did not get a majority, and Pierre Poilievre did not get government. They have to sit there, both teams, and figure out why before they try to make another run at it.
You're comfortable with the Conservatives leaving Pierre Poilievre to lead that next election?
Yeah. We'll put it this way. I think there's going to be conversation. I don't know how formal it's going to be. People are saying, well, if he's humbled, if he has some humility, he should stay. And I'm like, well, you know what? I like the caucus to decide these things first because they're the people who were in the room. In a case like this, I think caucus who just lost their seats should also be included in the first caucus meeting afterward. Generally, they are. Some parties go as far as to include defeated candidates who have never served in caucus in the meeting just so they can have that campaign review. There's no good things here, Mike. It's all good and no good.
I want to know what the payout was or the bribe offered to the MP who just got reelected 3 days ago, and then on the Friday of the same week where he won re-election, I'm resigning to make way for the leader. That does not come without a price, and we all know it.
Yes, but I'm also sitting there thinking, geez, he did not qualify for his MP pension yet. I really thought it was going to be somebody longer serving, like the Elmer MacKay who stepped aside from Mulrooney. Mulrooney took the seat, and then Elmer's son ran and got parachuted up through the hierarchy as a thank you. I thought it would be somebody like that. I did not expect it. But, if the Prime Minister's running in Calgary, he's spending a lot of time in Ottawa. In Kitchener, we had the minister's regional office, and that was Diane Finley's office for around here where all the political decisions for southwestern Ontario were made. He might end up running that office for the Prime Minister in Calgary. There's jobs that come with government
for sure,
that can prepare you for re-election again. You know what I mean? He could be paid well, forward-facing, picture in the paper on behalf of.
The fun in this parliament has only just begun. Thanks for being a part of it, David.
Thanks for having me.
David Drewe, owner Negotiating Change, Government Relations and Stakeholder Engagement Strategies, joins us every Monday, 11:30 for Drewe's Views here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Time for the local business spotlight on 570 News Radio.
And very pleased to be joined this morning by my good friend Sandy Nickel, founder, baker, and condiment maker with Snickelfritz Kitchens. Sandy, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Very glad to hear it. So let's talk about the inspiration, Sandy, for Snickelfritz Kitchens. What inspired you to start it, and how does it connect to the culinary traditions here in Waterloo Region?
Okay, well, Snickelfritz Kitchens was actually born during COVID, and my IT consulting business tanked during that time. So to keep myself busy, I started baking my butter tarts. And then there was this fella called Mike Farwell who did a Farwell for Hire campaign, and I started kind of getting out into the community with my tarts by sponsoring him, and that worked out really well for all of us, I think.
As I recall, it worked out pretty darn well for me, Sandy, yes. So with the rich food culture we have here in Waterloo Region, how do you bring those traditional flavors to life in a modern way?
Okay. our products are truly a nod to the flavors and traditions of Waterloo County. Our tarts are very traditional, made in the old-fashioned way. And I hear so many people go, oh, yeah, they're just like my Nana used to make, or my mom or my auntie. And sometimes you'll get they're better, but don't tell them I said that. And then we have our lineup of sauces, some unique flavors. For example, we have our butter tart mustard and our butter tart barbecue sauce. So the butter tart mustard, they both are just a real unique flavor and really great for all of your savory products. And then we have our Oktoberfest mustard. And when Snyder's discontinued their Oktoberfest mustard, I'm just like, we can't go without that in our community. So I made it, I experimented, and put my own little Snickelfritz twist on it, and actually made it gluten-free. So we, use a different way of thickening it. And then I did the same thing. The Willie's chili sauce and zucchini relish, they went out of business as well. And so then I thought, well, I've been doing preserves for years, like in my family kitchen, as a kid, chopping up the vegetables and stuff. And I'm like, I can do this. So Millie's chili sauce and Millie's zucchini relish was born. And Millie's my mom. So I grew up, I'm going to get teary, learning how to make the preserves in her kitchen. And I'm so delighted that I can bring that out to the community. And so far, they've become a real hit. So I'm happy about that.
Well, speaking of the community, Sandy, I see you everywhere, it seems. I see you at markets. I see you at events. And we know that community does play a huge role in local food. So what does being part of our community here in Waterloo Region mean to you and Snickelfritz Kitchens?
Well, I absolutely love being part of the Waterloo community, the Waterloo Region community, and Southwestern Ontario. We have such a rich culture of farmland and produce and food in this area, and I'm delighted that I can get my supplies, get my products and ingredients from all the small family-run farms in the area, and that is hugely important to me. I also have a beautiful community of people who sell my products, and they're small, independent stores as well, and that's my market, and that's where I'm going to stay. My home base is Cloverleaf Farms in New Hamburg. I do all the baking, me and my team do all the baking out there, and all the tarts, our tarts are fresh out there, and then we've got great other people in the stores in the community like Central Fresh, Brady's, Vincenzo's, Victoria Street Market, Detweiler Sausage, and I know I'm forgetting people, and I, apologize for that, but the relationships are amazing. And then there's the not-for-profits. I love working with the not-for-profits. I have been working in the community forever, and I like to be able to help them out by sponsoring. So I do sponsorships, and I work with organizations like Volunteer Waterloo Region. I mean, where would we be without volunteers in our community? Extended Family Waterloo Region, they do amazing work in our community. And of course, Oktoberfest. I couldn't not be part of Oktoberfest, so I'll be with them and sponsoring them again this year. And Blues Festival, I just signed another contract to sponsor Blues Festival, and you can come and see me at the Thursday night show. I'm going to be providing my my tickets there, or my tarts there at the paid show. So I'd love to see you guys come out. And then, of course, there's Farwell for Hire. I like sponsoring Farwell. And so this year, I'm going to be sponsoring again, and I'm going to donate 5% of all of the Snickelfritz sales in May.
Come on with your coming on, Sandy. Come on now. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You know what? You do so much in our community. And, I mean, the need for finding a cure for cystic fibrosis is so important. And so it's just, I feel it's such a small part that I can do to work with you on that and make sure that you're successful again this year.
I can't tell you how much that means to us, Sandy. I love all the work that you do, the condiments, the preserves, and of course the butter tarts without raisins. But
I will bring you some this year. And I just want to say that people can find out where to buy my products or our products at Snickelfritzkitchens.ca. That's SNICKELFRITZ Kitchens with an S.ca.
keep up the great work, and thank you so much for your support, Sandy.
Thank you, Mike. I love you, and hugs to Jen, too.
You got it. Sandy Nickel, founder, baker, condiment maker, Snickelfritz Kitchens, Snickelfritzkitchens.ca. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
The local business spotlight, where your business comes first. 570 News Radio.
And we continue right into your hour on the show. Got a rant? Got a rave? Get either of them off your chest and onto the air in the next 60 minutes. Open lines coming for you on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Your daily Talkback Hour begins on Mondays. It is the Rant or Rave Hour. Got a rant because you're upset about something? Okay. Got a rave because you're happy about something else? That's fine too. 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. We're going to get right to the phones. Dave is with us. Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon, Mike. I have two raves, both sports related.
Okay.
First one is to the under 18 World Championships over the weekend, whenever it was. Our Canada won the gold.
I believe our boy Brady Martin from Elmira was on that team.
I believe so. And the second is to our three Canadian teams, who this week are playing for the second round in the NHL.
You mean there's another team besides the Toronto Maple Leafs, Dave?
Well, yeah. You know that. There's the Oilers, who I follow as my second choice.
Yes, sir.
And the Winnipeg Jets, who, wow, what a game.
Indeed it was. Quite the game last night.
Have a great day, Mike.
Thanks, Dave. You too. Winnipeg scoring 2 goals in the final 2 minutes to force overtime. It goes to double overtime where the Jets beat the St. Louis Blues. So let this sink in for a moment. 2 years ago, it was Nick Hague with the Las Vegas Golden Knights, Kitchener boy, winning a Stanley Cup. Last year, it was Steven Lorentz with the Florida Panthers, winning a Stanley Cup. This year, Mark Scheifele, another Kitchener kid, and the Winnipeg Jets are off to the second round. I'm going to have a hard time these playoffs because not only Mark Scheifele and another Kitchener connection, but how about, Logan Stanley plays for the Winnipeg Jets, Waterloo boy, former Kitchener Ranger. But how about in Dallas, where head coach Pete DeBoer, alongside one of his assistants, Steve Spott, everybody remembers the two of them from their time here in Kitchener. Pete DeBoer just set a new professional sports record. He's 9-0 in Game 7s. 9-0. No other coach in any of the 4 major North American sports have as good a record, have won as many Game 7s as Pete DeBoer. I love my Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm desperate for my Toronto Maple Leafs to win a Stanley Cup. But in order to do that, they'd have to go through a Kitchener and Waterloo kid in Mark Scheifele and Logan Stanley of the Winnipeg Jets, or Pete DeBoer and Steve Spott with the Dallas Stars. I really want to see Pete win a Stanley Cup too. He's done everything but in coaching. Oh, it's tough being a sports fan sometimes, huh? Terry, you're next. Rant or rave?
Hey, good morning, Mike. Well, I got on fast.
pretty quiet.
I just saw your name. I thought I want to hear from Terry today, you lucky so-and-so.
Oh, there you go. Thanks. Yeah, I wasn't going to comment on hockey. I'll put that aside. But it's interesting this morning. You're right, Mike. Someone called in and mentioned about the 91 candidates in Pierre Poilievre's writing.
Yeah.
There was 91 candidates on the ballot for the other guy, too, so it was the same writing.
That's right. And just for the record, the longest ballot campaign is trying to get 200 names on the ballot in Alberta, where Pierre Poilievre is going to run in a by-election.
I think, Mike, my opinion, I think the more the merrier. It reflects more on democracy, and according to what I say, whether that matters or not. But going back to this resignation of the candidate out in Alberta, in Crowfoot, whatever it's called, why don't they just he resigned since the election was just last week, and why doesn't Pierre Poilievre just instead of having a by-election because it's so soon, why does he just go in his place? He won 80% of the votes on that, right?
Terry, no, you know me. I'm all about by-elections. I'm all about them. Voters have to have a say.
Exactly. I could see 2-3 years down the road if someone resigned their seat. Yeah, it's because so much time has.
But what you're saying then is they voted only for the party, not the person.
Well, when it's just a week, yeah, I think it's kind of silly.
But maybe they voted for Terry and they didn't vote for Mike.
Mike, yeah.
Yeah. So do you want me to just walk in there and say, now I'm Terry? I'm just as good as Terry? Let the voters decide.
If Mike was running in the blue party and Terry was running in the other, let's say the brown party, just using that color out there, then Mike should go in. Whoever wants to run in or replace the Mike in the red party, then yeah, I don't know. It's just something out there. Do we really have democracy? Mike, let me tell you this. When a party wins 39% of the popular vote, and they at most times do get a majority, I don't think that's democracy. But what do I know? I'm just thinking, just put Pierre there in their place and save us some cash. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Anyway, Mike, another thing, I did see that game last night. You know why the St. Louis Blues lost that game?
Why?
Well, they had a 3-1 lead with 2 minutes left. Because nowadays these teams are so afraid to ice the puck late in the game that they're so worried that the faceoff's going to come back into their zone and they're going to give up a goal. Well, you know what? If you ice the puck, you shave off 6-7 seconds, and instead of having these frivolous practices, which I'm sure these teams do with a lot of useless drills that make no sense, practice faceoffs, and then you don't have to worry about icing the puck. That's why the Blues lost that game. So. That's my opinion, Mike, once again, for what it matters. But anyway, I don't know who's going to win between Dallas and Winnipeg. But it's going to be an interesting series. And I'm pulling for Mr. Peter DeBoer. I hope he's coached, about 5-6 teams, and he has nothing to show for it. So I'm hoping he pulls through this year.
All right, Terry. Appreciate the call and all of the various thoughts. That's what Rant or Rave is for. Let's hear from you on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Get right back to the phones on a busy Rant or Rave this Monday afternoon. Andre, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Well, my first rave is to you. I got 3 loads of laundry done listening to your show.
I'm glad I'm helping you be productive, Andre. Good man. Did you separate your whites from your darks, though? Okay, then you didn't. I don't care what you do. My buddy says he never does that. He just throws all of his laundry in the machine at the same time.
No, why I have to use my daughter and make sure there's no pink in it.
Exactly.
So, it would have been wicked if it would have been you announcing the game, because then I would have watched Winnipeg Jets all the way through. But since you weren't there announcing it, I just went to sleep before and got up this morning. They won. So
yeah, it's my great regret in life, Andre, that I'm not working in Winnipeg, let me tell you.
I didn't even drink. Imagine that.
No, I can't imagine that. I was being sarcastic about Winnipeg, by the way.
Because I feel safe with you. So I have to go to a rant, Mike. Unfortunately, because of the drink and driving, I keep hearing on the radio day after day. Like, are you kidding me? Like, when is this? Okay, it's not going to stop. But like, when is the sanction going to get higher? So I think if Doug Ford wants to do something, like, let's bring the sanction up to the judge. Like, this is just ridiculous. I have so many people, so many friends, like so many neighbors, everybody. Like, there is no sanctions enough. It's like you said, it's a loaded gun and it has to stop.
All right, Andre. I appreciate the call. yes, you know where I stand on this. I don't think our penalties for drinking and driving are near severe enough. Kyle, good afternoon. Rant or rave?
I got a rave to Bob. Bob, it's nice that he cares about us. You know, he cares about us.
Bob who? Bob Barker?
Bob, Liberal Bob?
Liberal Bob. Okay, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, yeah.
He made a comment about us, I guess, on last Thursday. He was worried about us, about the election, all that stuff. It's an election. We move on. There'll be another time to voice our opinions. But it's just nice to know that he's worried about us, when he's more worried about me than Canada itself. Him and his leader are, Trump and Carney are best friends. They're both liberals. They both want to, put the countries more and more in debt. They want to take away our rights. They want to, cut taxes and cut this and cut that. It's nice to know that Bob cares about that. So I just want to give a huge rave to Bob for calling in to making sure I'm okay. Thanks there, Mike.
All right, Kyle. Appreciate the call. I'm not sure I understand the connection. I do remember, though, Liberal Bob, one of our regular callers, being a little bit worried about Kyle and Paul and even Andre for some reason after the results of the election, because I think Liberal Bob, quite happy with the Liberal victory, albeit a minority, was worried about listeners and callers to this show who tend to lean right of center. I want to go back to a conversation we had on the show earlier today, and it was around this idea that the provincial government is going to begin consultation on the concept of moving into mandatory treatment for addictions anyone who encounters or comes through our prison system. So if you've been charged or even incarcerated for any length of time, the provincial government is opening consultations on the idea, okay, you're in this system, the prison system, the court system, we're going to use that system to funnel you into treatment for your addiction. And it may be involuntary treatment. We're just going to send you to be treated. And our guest, who's a leading mental health law expert in Canada, says this doesn't work. Research has proven it won't work, and it's not a good idea. And I've read considerable research on the idea, and much of it does point to that same direction. The challenge is there's not a whole lot of information or research coming from the other side of the spectrum, if indeed there is. Maybe this is a complete failure all around. I find it difficult today because we have witnessed safe consumption sites, the allowance for people, no matter what their mental state may be and what their drug addiction may be, what their substance addiction may be, to set up shop in public parks, on public street corners. It's very difficult. And I'm yet to meet one person in the community, truly. Not one person have I met in the community that doesn't want to see folks moved towards treatment. I haven't even met a family who doesn't want to see people moved towards treatment. There's no doubt that we don't have enough treatment spaces. That's absolutely certain. But the idea that absent that, we just make it a free-for-all on the streets is tough. And if you're already into the court system or the prison system, why not add to that the treatment system? Clinton sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. The idea of mandating addiction services for incarcerated individuals should not be seen as controversial. These individuals have committed crimes, and with that, some of their rights have been forfeited. Furthermore, many criminal activities are linked to substance abuse. Addiction itself may be a driving factor behind their actions. While it's true that most people may resist addiction treatment, it's important to recognize that their judgment is impaired. If they were thinking clearly, they might acknowledge the benefits of these services. Rehabilitation through addiction treatment for prisoners can offer them the chance to regain clarity and control over their lives. By helping them overcome substance dependence, society increases the likelihood that they will re-enter the community as responsible, contributing members rather than repeating the cycle of crime. So I'll say again, I've heard from many experts. I've read a lot of the research, but all I keep hearing from people in our community is what I'm hearing from Clinton. To a person, I hear that we want to direct these people to help, even, yes, if that help is against their will. They're addicted to substances that are incredibly dangerous to themselves and, when they're on those substances, to others. Shouldn't we mandate some sort of treatment for that? It's your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, rant or rave edition on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a busy rant or rave hour. Right back to the phones we go. Jerry, good afternoon.
Hello, Mike. I heard you talking earlier about some of the NHL players that are from Kitchener-Waterloo, but one of the names I didn't hear you mention was Steven Lorentz, who played for the Panthers last year and is with the Leafs this year, looking for revenge.
It was the second name I said. I started with Nick Hague 2 years ago, then Steven Lorentz last year with Florida. And now this year, so yes, I didn't mention him being with Toronto, but absolutely, he's still out there playing.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we had two of the three remaining Canadian teams in the Stanley Cup final?
That'd be okay.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. I do have a rant, and it's about driving. You've talked about the speed limits before in the past, and I certainly have agreed with a lot of your opinions. The one thing that I really wonder about, I noticed it this morning. I was driving on Craigleith, and just as I came up to Fisher Holman, there was a sign, and I looked across the road to Roxton, and Roxton is 50, and Craigleith is 40. They're right beside each other. They're very similar, the same kind of housing and everything else. It just makes me wonder how they came up with that. And then before that, I was on John Street in Kitchener, and Union, and they're 30, and there is absolutely no schooling, no schools, nothing. How is that happening these days?
Strong neighborhood associations, Jerry.
Oh, that's all you need.
I guess so. I'm with you. If we should just make it, if they're serious about this nonsense, make every street a 40. Everyone, including Westmount Road, University Avenue, Weber, make them all 40. At least then we know what we're doing out there.
Yeah, because I know even from our cottage, we had the same thing happen. We had, on our cottage, we had a 60 speed limit, and then some other places close by to our cottage, the roads were 40. And I called in to the township, and I asked them what the question was and why that was happening, and the guy said, "Oh, I talked to a few people before and got nowhere. I finally got the right person, and the right person said, "Oh, that's a mistake. It shouldn't be that high. Here's what it should be, and we'll change it in 3 or 4 weeks." And they did.
Good. All right, Jerry, appreciate the call today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Enjoy your day. That reminds me, do you remember when the expressway, Highway 8, headed out towards Fairway Road and then to the 401 from Montgomery, King and Montgomery? It was 70 initially by mistake. It was supposed to be a 90. It was listed as a 70. And it was actually the Waterloo Region Record that broke the story and then asked the great question, well, what about all the people who were given tickets for speeding over the 70 kilometers per hour posted limit when it was supposed to be a 90? Anyway, that's all in a bygone era, but Jerry's story reminded me of that. Oh, that's a mistake. The mistake that we're making around here is twofold. One is inconsistency in the speed limits from 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 to 80. Take your pick. It's ridiculous. Get one speed limit and stick to it. Number two is the enforcement of school zone speed limits outside of school hours. Utterly ridiculous, complete cash grab. This is Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. If you were listening before that news update with Colin and you heard Jerry's call about inconsistent speed limits, that, along with the enforcement of school zone speed limits outside of school hours, make me very upset. They chafe my chaps. And on top of that, of course, I've been going on about this for a while, and I cannot believe what I'm actually seeing right now. I'll describe it to you in just a moment. But if you want to know, I've been on this sign thing. Like, I just want to know. I want to know who's making the decisions. Thank you to Clinton for sending the email with photo attached to Mike at 570news.com. How about Hazel Street in Waterloo as you're approaching the traffic signal at Columbia? Okay? You're on Hazel. You're coming to the lights at Columbia. 7 meters, 10, we'll give it 10 meters before the lights. Sign says Maximum 40 area ends. Go through the intersection, the other side of the lights. What does it say? Maximum 40 area begins. Wait, though, it gets better. So you're ending the max 40 before you get to the intersection. You cross through the intersection. Now you're back to 40. Now the 40 area begins again. But wait, right after the 40 begins, 30 begins because you're entering a school zone. Like what? What? One of those 40s you don't need. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Somebody is making a lot of money, and it's in the sign business. What are we doing out there? Which bureaucrat is signing off on this signage? That's all I want to know. My good. Do you get paid per sign approved? Is that how this works? Good grievous. Dallas, rant or rave, good afternoon. I'm sorry. I am so fired up.
I love that. I seriously love that. Anyway, I want to talk. It's not a rant or a rave. I just want to speak of personal experience as far as Mr. Ford's idea of trying to mandate people to go into treatment and stuff like that.
Yep.
I give you a little story. Some 23 years ago, I begrudgingly went to rehab. I'm not going to make no joke about it. I was in a bad way. For no other reason than to save my job. I went to the rehab, and within a week and a half of being there, my attitude changed philosophically. And after my 6-week stint, I came out of there and I never looked back. I think my point is that a lot of these people, the do-gooders and naysayers, they think, oh, well, we'll try and push somebody into it. Well, a lot of times it takes a little push for somebody to find the right track. And that's about all I can say about that.
All right, Dallas, I appreciate the call. Sounds like somebody who is saying if you get into the treatment facility, you're going to find that your outlook changes too. Give them a little push. Doesn't have to be a hard shove, just a little push in the right direction. Afif, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. I'm back.
You're back from Switzerland.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
And basically yesterday I came back home and I watched Winnipeg or not Winnipeg. Which one was it?
Yesterday's game, yes, was Winnipeg and St. Louis.
Oh my God, that was one of the most amazing games. So that was my big thing. And the other thing is, when I came back, I also learned that Carney won, which is oh well. But also, Singh, the one thing I wanted to rant a lot about is Singh really just wanted his pension and then just leave, because right now that's what he thinks. He's like, oh, I'm leaving. I don't want to be an NDP person anymore, because he just doesn't want that anymore. Because
sorry, Afif, I lost you there. What about leaving Jagmeet Singh?
The thing is, he just wants his pension, then just leave.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So you think about it, because he came in and he's like, he lost his seat, so he lost. Now I don't care because I already got my pension, so I'm going to leave.
Well, he didn't leave. He was not reelected, though. And yes, it's hard to feel too bad for him because he will be able to collect his pension in about 10 years when the pension kicks in. And it's a pretty nice pension if you spend enough time as an MP. So I get you. I'll remind you. You remember when former Prime Minister Stephen Harper was going to bring an end to the gold-plated pensions in Ottawa? How'd that work out for us? Interesting news today from the New York Times, just sharing in the last half hour or so, that in an effort to increase deportations out of the United States, the Trump administration is now offering $1,000 and a plane ride home to immigrants who self-deport. How about that? So we go from crazy stories about people being picked up literally off the street and put on planes and flown to El Salvador. Now they're saying, we don't want that to happen to you, so you can self-deport. And if you do, we'll give you $1,000 in cash and a plane ride back home. That is the latest offer from the White House and the Trump administration in order to increase the number of deportations. Don't make us do it. You do it. And we'll give you $1,000 and a plane ticket. This is the world that we are living in today. Rant or Rave continues here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Oh, Matt, I see what you're trying to do here. And I appreciate you for trying, but I've been down this road before, too. Matt's email to Mike at 570news.com. Hope your Monday is going well. It's rant or rave, not the hour of rage these days. Keep it together, because I was getting more than a little bit frustrated with the over signage that we see on our roadways. And Matt points out, and he's correct, because I've addressed this before, municipalities follow the guidelines provided in the Ontario traffic manuals, authored by the Ministry of Transportation. I know, but here's what I'm telling you. Stop following the guidelines. It's honestly that simple. If it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't, there is no way anybody in the city can look at what's been done. So I'll just use Hazel Street and Waterloo as the example again. Nobody who actually authorizes that sign. I don't give a tinker's darn what the MTO guidelines say, okay? I'm not putting that sign there. And yes, as a municipality, as the person working in the department that the municipality says we need a sign, I would say no. I would say this is stupid. It's a waste of money. It's not necessary. Somebody somewhere has got to do it, and it's got to be the person on the ground. Slightly different concept, but I was like a low man on the ladder, low rung on the ladder at a big company, and I was helping one of the executives who was getting ready for a presentation, put that presentation together, and I noticed that they had talked about, the thought of something or other making them want to shudder. And they used shutter, like on Windows, with T's instead of D's. So I corrected their spelling. I know it's a little bit different, but I was this little underling saying, excuse me, Mr. VP, you should change that because it's not correct. All I'm saying is whoever the person is authorizing the signs has got to say the madness needs to end, and it ends with me. I've been on Hazel Street. I see what the signs are now. We don't need this sign. So we will not. I don't care. I don't care what the guidelines say. And I want cities to stand up and do that. They'll save money, too. And guess whose money they're saving? Ours. We hear all the time, about cash-strapped municipalities. Well, guess what? Here's a way to get back some of that cash. Which leads me nicely into this little nugget. So I found myself yesterday at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. And I gotta hand it again. I really do, to the staff that works there, because I really don't belong in there on a Sunday afternoon. There's stuff going on. I'm not an employee, but I hadn't really had a chance yet to say goodbye to the season. It ended so abruptly on Wednesday night. Boom, Thursday is May the 1st. I start into Farwell for hire, blah, blah, blah. I've been running around, and I haven't had a chance just to take a moment. So in I walk like I own the place, and one of the staff there says, "What, did you come in and watch the ice melt?" We had a little laugh. They let me hang out for a couple of minutes. And then on my way out, I found myself, and I had never done this before. I stopped in the main entry area near the box office, where they recognize our famous Kraut line and whatnot. And there they have a series of plaques that tell the story of how the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium was built. And I hadn't read that before, and I was unaware how much controversy actually surrounded it It opened in 1951. I always knew that. It was erected as a memorial to our war dead. I always knew that. And the Kitchener Sports Association was the driving force behind getting the funding and getting this project off the ground. I always knew that. What I didn't know is that the seeds of the idea were planted actually 13 years prior to construction in 51. It goes back to 1938, and this vision came forward of this auditorium for the city of Kitchener, a place where sports and major events could be held. And along the way, it actually was set back because what were described as the quote-unquote ratepayers of the time were very upset at the price tag, and they won the vote of the day and delayed ultimate construction of the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. Eventually, it did get built. Projected price tag or estimated price tag was about $450,000. It ends up costing about $1 million, more than double the estimate. But people were so against it because you don't want to spend public dollars on something like that, right? Just think today what this city would be like if we didn't have the vision more than 70 years ago to build the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium that still stands today. And you know me, I never met two nickels I didn't want to rub together. But this came across my radar, and it will be on the agenda at a meeting of the City of Kitchener's Infrastructure Committee next week. There is a plan. In fact, work is already underway at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium on a renovation. The main part of this renovation is in and around the facilities used by the hockey club, from the offices to the facilities for the hockey team. So they're going to do this big renovation, and the report that's coming to the Infrastructure Committee next week suggests that, hey, the team is undertaking this renovation, the city of Kitchener should consider upgrading the fan experience at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium by renovating a restaurant. Get in something that's more modern, offers more in the way of menu, etc. $2 million. That would be $2 million taxpayer dollars on top of all of the other money that's being spent, but that's being taken care of by the team. But while the renovation's underway, why don't we just invest $2 million more in the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium and upgrade and renovate the existing restaurant? That would upgrade the fan experience. It certainly would, wouldn't it? And where would we be without the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium today? But when council starts talking about spending $2 million on it, how are you going to feel? I'll tell you what, you could find the $2 million if you just stop putting up all the damn signs. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Final minutes of Talkback today. Let's get right back to the phones. Joe, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. I'm really glad that you mentioned that idea of upgrading the restaurant at the Odd. That restaurant is just garbage. It's trash. It's like the food is awful.
Easy now, easy. I'm sure people are working pretty hard over there, Joe.
Well, the service is not great either. Like, you upgrade it, put some money into it, and expand the menu, and you can make so much more revenue from that.
All right. Well, that's the plan in a report that's coming to Kitchener's Infrastructure Committee next Monday. And it's going to cost the city $2 million if that's what they want to do. I guess we'll find out. Mary, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Boy, oh boy, you've got a fire in your belly today about the signs.
I got knots in my knickers. I got chafing on my chaps.
I'm with you, baby.
All right, let's go. Let's hear it.
I live near Victoria Street. There's a school there, right? And then I turn on to Stoke, and then there's a school there, and it's the very same thing. I'm coming off of 40, but they still put, when I turn, 40, but 10 feet or less than 10 feet away, beginning 30. Let's get with the program.
Let's get with the program.
The law is an ass sometimes.
Mary, you watch your language, young lady.
Well,
Wow.
that's a direct saying.
Okay.
Quote.
The law is an ass sometimes. I haven't heard that saying before, but I'll take your word for it. Interesting that this comes up at the end of our show today, because not so much signs, but the speed cameras that are sometimes associated with them. Again, I'll remind you, enforcing a school zone speed limit outside of school hours is nothing but a cash grab, full stop. You cannot tell me out of one side of your mouth that this 30 kilometer per hour speed limit is about protecting the kids. And then out of the other side of your mouth, say, I'm going to give you a ticket at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Like, that's just, the kids aren't there. The kids are in bed. So you're just trying to grab cash out of my pocket. We're going to talk about those speed cameras in Wellington County that have made an incredible amount of cash, about 4 times what they were expected to make, and they've only been running for about 3 months. So we'll get into some of those details. Plus, City of Waterloo sells another plot of land near Rim Park. We'll find out what the plans are for that and more when we get back together tomorrow morning at 9, okay? My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.